It was almost midnight when Emily unlocked the door to her apartment. Her arms ached from the double shift at the diner, her feet throbbed in cheap sneakers worn thin, and her only thought was of a quick shower and collapsing into bed. The hallway was dim, the bulb above flickering softly, casting tired shadows against the peeling walls of her third-floor walk-up in South Boston. She twisted the key slowly, careful not to wake her son, who was already asleep in the next room. Inside, everything was still. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the muffled city noise beyond the window. Emily kicked off her shoes, hung her coat, and walked toward the bathroom. She paused. Something was off. She could hear it clearly now. Running water. Her heart jumped. She had not left the faucet on. No, her 4-year-old was fast asleep. No one else had a key. Her stomach clenched. Cautiously, she stepped forward, bare feet quiet on the tile. She grabbed the nearest thing, a rolled-up magazine on the counter, and approached the bathroom. The door was slightly ajar. Steam poured out from the gap, warm and thick. Someone was inside. Emily's fingers trembled as she pushed the door open. She froze. There, standing, with his back to her in the clouded mirror, was a man. Completely naked. His dark hair was wet, his skin damp from the hot spray still running behind him. A white towel was clutched lazily in one hand, as if he had just stepped out of the shower and was in no rush to leave. Emily let out a strangled gasp. He turned. For a moment they both stared. His eyes widened, but not in fear. In confusion. Recognition. Emily's breath caught in her throat. No, it could not be. Not him. Her grip on the magazine loosened, and it dropped to the floor with a soft thud. The man blinked, stunned just as she was. "Emily?" he asked, voice low, hesitant. Her name on his lips hit like a slap. Her vision blurred for a second, her entire body flushed with heat, anger, and disbelief. "Aiden," she whispered. It had been 5 years. 5 years since he vanished without a word. 5 years since she found out she was pregnant and swore never to utter his name again. And now here he was, naked, in her bathroom. Emily stumbled backward. "What the hell are you doing here?" Her voice was shaky, rising. "I thought this was my place," Aiden replied, grabbing the towel and wrapping it around his waist. "I just signed a lease for apartment 3B. The landlord gave me a key today." Emily's brain reeled. That was her apartment. She had been renting it for over a year. "What?" she snapped. He looked just as confused. I think there's been some kind of mistake." But Emily was not listening anymore. Her eyes were locked on his face. Those eyes, that jawline, the faint scar above his eyebrow. He had not changed. And suddenly her breath caught again. "Noah." She thought of her son, sleeping in the next room. His eyes, his face. He looked exactly like this man standing dripping wet in her bathroom. The pieces started to click together, one by one, like a puzzle she never wanted to solve, and the final piece slammed into place with brutal clarity. He was not just Aiden. He was Noah's father, and judging by the watch gleaming on his wrist, the platinum card peeking from his jeans on the floor, and the calm way he carried himself, he was also a billionaire now. Emily took another step back, heart racing, as everything she had buried for years clawed its way back to the surface. She had just found the man who broke her heart, and he had no idea he had a son. Emily Sullivan had always been the kind of woman who kept her head down and got things done. At 29, she had no time for illusions or daydreams. Life had demanded too much of her too early, and she had learned to survive without expecting kindness in return. Her days were long and exhausting, split between waitressing at a corner diner and managing her freelance graphic design gigs late into the night. Her evenings belonged to Noah, the one beautiful result of the most painful chapter in her life. He was 4 years old now, quiet and curious, with messy brown curls and large eyes that seemed too deep for someone so small. He had never asked about his father, and she had never told him. In her mind, Aiden Hayes had disappeared from their lives the moment she stared down at a positive pregnancy test and realized she would be doing it alone. 5 years ago, she had been in love. Not the casual kind of love that flutters in and out, but the kind that roots itself in your bones. Aiden had been everything she never expected to find. He was brilliant, funny, and thoughtful. They met at a university mixer. She was studying medical illustration. He was pursuing an MBA with a scholarship, and dreams bigger than his modest background allowed. What started as light flirtation over bad punch and a shared distaste for small talk turned into late-night walks, library study sessions that turned into sleepovers, and whispered confessions about the kind of life they wanted. But that dream shattered just 2 months after graduation. Emily had discovered she was pregnant. She had panicked but still called Aiden, hoping foolishly that love would be enough. Instead, he vanished. One night he was holding her hand, tracing circles on her skin and telling her everything would be okay, and the next, his phone was disconnected, his apartment emptied, his name scrubbed from every trace she could find. No note, no goodbye, just gone. For months, she replayed every moment they had shared, wondering where it had gone wrong. Then, out of the blue, a man came to her door. Middle-aged, cold smile, expensive suit. He claimed to be Aiden's father and offered her a check with more zeros than she had ever seen. He told her to disappear, told her Aiden had a future ahead of him and she was only going to drag him down. She refused the money, shut the door in his face, raised her baby on her own. Since then, life had become a routine of struggle. Her mother's health declined rapidly after a heart attack 2 years ago. Hospital bills, medications, and endless appointments meant Emily's dreams of becoming a full-time illustrator were shoved into a box she kept in the closet. Rent was late more than once. She skipped meals so Noah would never have to. But despite all of it, she had built something stable, something safe. That stability cracked the moment Aiden reappeared in her bathroom. He looked different now, sharper, his jaw more defined, his posture straight and confident. The boyish charm she remembered had matured into something quieter, more grounded, but his eyes, they were exactly the same. They still unsettled her, still made something shift inside her chest, even as she tried to hold on to her anger. What she did not understand was why he was here. Why now? He said he had just signed a lease, that the landlord had given him keys to apartment 3B, but that made no sense. She had been living there for over a year and had just renewed her lease 2 weeks ago. When she confronted her landlord the next morning, red-eyed and furious, he stammered and apologized, claiming a clerical error. Apparently, a new management company had purchased the building recently, and he had not updated the tenant records. The new owner? Aiden Hayes. Emily felt like the floor had dropped beneath her. Of course he was not just back, he was her landlord now. Worse, she Googled his name and found article after article about Hayes Capital, a venture firm that had tripled in value in under 3 years. The face on Forbes' 30 Under 30 finance issue was the same face that had kissed her goodbye 5 years ago and never looked back. Only now, that face belonged to a billionaire. She had no idea how to process any of it. Noah did not understand who this man was, and Emily had no intention of telling him, not yet. Not when the memories still burned, not when her hands still shook every time she heard Aiden's voice in the hallway. He had no right to walk back into her life just because time had made him rich. But deep down, beneath the bitterness and exhaustion, something else stirred, a question she had buried so long it no longer had words. What if he had not chosen to leave? What if he had been forced? Emily hated herself for hoping. The days that followed were a delicate balance between avoidance and inevitability. Emily tried to pretend that nothing had changed, that the man from her past had not resurfaced and taken up space in the apartment building she called home. She kept her head down at the diner, rushed Noah off to preschool every morning, and filled every spare moment with noise, movement, or chores. Anything to avoid silence, because silence made room for thoughts, and thoughts made room for Aiden. But Aiden, for all his wealth and polished presence, was persistent in quiet ways. He did not storm her door or demand answers. Instead, he showed up in small places. He was in the hallway, pausing at just the right time to hold the elevator. He was in the lobby, casually mentioning a package she forgot at the mail desk. He even knocked one evening, holding a bag of groceries with Noah's favorite cereal peeking from the top. She had not told him. Somehow he still remembered. Emily kept her guard up. She never invited him in. When he handed her the bag, she thanked him curtly and closed the door before Noah could run to it. But Aiden did not press. He gave her space. And maybe that was why, one Saturday afternoon, she found herself hesitating when he knocked again. He asked if Noah could come to the park with him. Just the park. Just for an hour. She should have said no. She should have slammed the door. But Noah had been lonely, and the look in his eyes when he heard the word park was too much. She agreed. Against every better judgment, against every fear, she packed Noah's backpack with wipes, snacks, and a firm warning to Aiden not to buy him anything. Aiden had smiled and nodded, his voice softer than she remembered. Emily watched from the window as they walked down the street, Noah's small hand in Aiden's large one. She did not know how long she stood there, frozen, heart tangled in 1,000 memories. When they returned, Noah was glowing. He talked about swings and ducks and ice cream that Aiden accidentally bought. She should have been angry, but when Aiden apologized, there was no smugness in his tone, just a quiet longing to be part of something he had missed. That night, after Noah fell asleep with chocolate on his cheek, Emily stared at her phone. Aiden had texted. "Thank you," it read, "for trusting me, even a little." That was the moment the wall cracked. They started seeing each other more. Small, contained moments. A quick coffee before her shift. A lunch on the park bench outside her building. He never forced conversation. He let her speak when she wanted, let the silence breathe when she did not. Emily learned that Aiden had built Hayes Capital from scratch after being disowned by his father. She learned that he had spent years trying to find her, only to be met with dead ends and cold trails. His father had not only removed him from her life, but erased any trace she might have left. Emily wanted to believe him. Part of her already did, but part of her still ached with the weight of those 5 lonely years. Trust was not something she could hand over freely. Aiden understood. He never pushed, but one evening after her mother's heart monitor had beeped erratically and Emily had spent 3 hours in the ER, Aiden showed up with takeout and sat beside her in the waiting room. He did not say anything. He just sat. That silence, that presence wrapped around her like safety, and when she finally leaned against him, when her head rested on his shoulder, neither of them moved. The change between them was slow, almost imperceptible. One night, he helped Noah with a school project while Emily cooked. Another night, she found him reading bedtime stories in voices so ridiculous she had to bite her lip to keep from laughing. And then, one rainy Thursday, she came home from work, soaked and shivering. Aiden was already inside. Noah had let him in, and he handed her a towel, eyes filled with unspoken concern. She thanked him. He said nothing. But as she dried her hair, their eyes met, and something shifted. Something real. They did not kiss that night, but the electricity in the air was unmistakable. It finally happened 2 weeks later. Emily had just finished putting Noah to bed when she walked into the kitchen and found Aiden washing dishes from the dinner he had cooked. She moved to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. Maybe it was the soft music playing from her old speaker. Maybe it was the way the room felt warmer with him in it. Maybe it was just time. She stepped closer. He turned, drying his hands on a towel, and before she could think, she kissed him. It was hesitant at first, familiar yet unfamiliar. But when his hands moved to her waist, when he whispered her name against her lips, she felt the years melt away. She felt the cold parts of her heart thawing. They stayed like that for minutes that felt like hours. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his and whispered, "I hate that I still want this." Aiden replied, "I hate that I lost it." That night, nothing more happened. No rush, no pushing, just two people standing in a kitchen trying to find their way back to something fragile and real. In the days that followed, they were careful. Noah still did not know. Emily was not ready to explain, not until she understood where it was all going. But the bond between them was growing stronger. Aiden was different now. He had seen the world, tasted wealth, and still came back looking for something only she had. Emily could feel it in the way he looked at her, in the way he listened when she talked about her mother's appointments or Noah's picky eating habits. He remembered every detail. Still, there were moments of hesitation. Emily often lay awake at night wondering if this was just guilt driving him, or nostalgia, or some misplaced attempt to fix the past. She asked him one night as they sat on the fire escape, their legs dangling over the street below. He looked at her for a long moment and said, "You think I'm here out of guilt? I could give Noah everything from a distance. I'm here because I love you, because I never stopped." It was not a grand declaration. It was not rehearsed. It just was, and it broke her open in ways she had not expected. She leaned into him, pressed her lips to his shoulder, and for the first time in years, allowed herself to believe in something good. A week later, Aiden surprised them both with a weekend trip to the coast. Nothing fancy, just a small cabin by the water. Emily almost said no, but Noah's excitement was too pure. The trip turned out to be more than a getaway. It was a window into what life could be. Watching Aiden teach Noah to skip stones, watching Noah crawl into his lap by the fireplace, watching Aiden fall asleep with his hand around hers, it felt like healing, like a life interrupted finally picking up again. On the drive home, Emily turned to him and asked, "Do you want to be part of his life, truly?" Aiden glanced at her, eyes steady. "I already am, but only if you let me stay." She nodded. It was not a promise, not yet, but it was the closest thing to hope she had offered in years. The week after the trip was quiet but heavier. Emily moved through her days with a strange mix of peace and tension. On the surface, things looked better than they had in years. Her son was smiling more. Her mother was responding better to treatment. Aiden had started to help pay for medications without making it feel like charity. He had even fixed the broken heater in the apartment without saying a word. But beneath all of that, something stirred in her chest, a familiar fear that nothing good ever lasted. She had felt it before. When she found out she was pregnant, when her mother first collapsed in the kitchen, when she kissed Aiden again and let him back into her world, she knew something was coming. She just did not know what. But something arrived in the form of a letter. Emily found it stuffed into her mailbox after her shift. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a familiar handwriting she had not seen in years. It was from Aiden's father, the same man who once stood at her door and told her she would ruin his son's life. The letter was short and cold. He knew Aiden was back in town. He knew about Noah, and he warned her not to make the same mistake she made years ago. There was no direct threat, but the meaning was clear. Stay away, stay quiet, or suffer. Emily's hands shook as she read the letter again and again. The past had not stayed buried. It had crawled its way back like a disease. That night, she said nothing to Aiden. She smiled through dinner, laughed with Noah, kissed Aiden goodnight like nothing had changed. But something had, and it would not go away. Aiden noticed the change. He was not stupid. He saw the way her smile tightened, the way she avoided his eyes. A few days later, after putting Noah to bed, he finally asked, "Are you okay? You've been distant." Emily hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to lie, to protect what little peace they had managed to rebuild. But then she looked at him, really looked at him, and something cracked. She pulled the letter from her bag and handed it over. Aiden read it in silence, his jaw tightening with each line. When he finished, he folded it neatly and placed it on the table. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice lower than she had ever heard it. "I didn't know he would do this again. I thought he had given up." Emily crossed her arms. "He hasn't. He's watching. He'll never stop." Aidan sat down, eyes fixed on the letter. He told her the full truth then. 5 years ago, his father had found out about the pregnancy. Aidan had planned to propose. He had been working extra shifts, saving up. He wanted to build a life with her, but before he could act, his father intervened. He threatened to cut Aidan off from everything: school funding, housing, job opportunities. But worse, he threatened Emily. He showed Aidan photos, surveillance, a file. He made it clear that if Aidan didn't walk away, Emily's life would be dismantled piece by piece. Aidan had tried to call her one last time, but his father had intercepted the phone. Within days, he was sent to Europe under the pretense of a business internship. His passport and phone were replaced, contacts wiped. Everything he built since then had been done without his father's help. Every dollar earned was his own, every success a way to reclaim what had been taken. Emily listened in silence, arms wrapped around herself. She wanted to scream, to throw something. But more than anything, she felt the crushing weight of everything she had never known. "You could have found a way," she said softly. "You could have fought for me." Aidan's voice cracked. "I didn't know about Noah. If I had known, I would have broken down every door. I promise you that." She did not respond, not immediately. The silence between them stretched too long. Finally, she said, "So what now? You think you can fix it all with a few apologies and weekend trips? That letter proves he still owns you. You think he won't come after me again? Or Noah?" Aidan stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the dark city below, hands clenched at his sides. Then he turned back. "I'm not the same man I was 5 years ago. I'm not a scared college kid living under my father's thumb. I own more of his empire now than he does. I have leverage, and I'm not afraid of him anymore." Emily shook her head. "You might not be, but I am. I have a son to protect. I can't afford to be brave." Aidan crossed the room and knelt in front of her. "You're the bravest person I know. You've raised Noah. You've cared for your mother. You built a life from nothing. But you don't have to do it alone anymore." His words hit something raw in her. She wanted to believe him, but belief was a luxury she'd learned to live without. The next day, Aidan acted. Without telling her, he hired private security for the building. He filed for a restraining order against his father. He called in favors from lawyers, partners, even journalists. He gathered every piece of proof: letters, threats, financial manipulation, and leaked it to the press. A scandal exploded across media outlets. Headlines screamed about corruption, abuse, family betrayal. Within days, Aidan's father was under investigation, his grip on the empire shattered. Emily watched from the sidelines, stunned. The man she had once loved. The boy who disappeared had returned, not just with love, but with fire. He was protecting her, truly, publicly. Still, the battle took a toll. The stress made her mother relapse. The hospital bills piled up. Noah began asking questions about the cameras in their hallway, the unfamiliar men outside the door. Emily began to break under the weight of it all. Then, one night, Noah had a fever, a high one. He was lethargic, pale. She rushed him to the hospital. Tests followed. Hours passed. Then a doctor came in with a clipboard and a carefully practiced expression. "Your son has a rare blood condition. His immune system is compromised. He'll need a bone marrow transplant." The room tilted. Emily could barely breathe. Aidan held her hand as the doctor explained the options. Immediate family were the best match candidates. She underwent testing first. Not compatible. Her mother too frail. No siblings. Then Aidan. When the results came back, the doctor smiled for the first time in days. "It's a perfect match." Emily sobbed. She did not care about the past. The wealth, the battles, the letters. Right now, the only thing that mattered was that her son had a chance. The transplant was scheduled, the surgery successful. Aiden stayed by Noah's side the entire time, reading stories, holding his tiny hand, whispering promises only fathers can make. Emily watched from the doorway, arms crossed, heart full of something she had not felt in years. Just when Noah finally opened his eyes and smiled, the weight lifted from her shoulders. Aiden looked up at her across the room. No words were needed. Everything that had been broken between them had found its way back. In the days that followed, Aiden moved into the apartment officially, not with grand declarations, but with quiet presence. A toothbrush beside hers, a coffee mug with his name, a pair of socks on the couch. Noah began calling him Dad. Unprompted, unforced. Emily did not correct him. She could not. It was the truth. And it was time she stopped running from it. The calm that followed was fragile. For the first time in years, Emily felt like she could breathe. Noah was healing, the doctors were cautiously optimistic, and Aiden was present in ways that felt real and steady. He made breakfast in the mornings, helped with school pickups, even sat through her mother's endless medical appointments with the patience of a man who had missed too much and was trying to earn back time. Emily had started to trust him, piece by piece, moment by moment, but she never said it out loud. She did not call what they had love. Not yet. She had learned not to name things that might disappear. Aiden, on the other hand, had no such hesitation. He spoke about the future openly, casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He mentioned moving into a bigger place. He asked Emily to consider quitting her second job. He offered to cover her mother's private care entirely. Emily refused the last part, still clinging to a sense of independence that felt more like pride than practicality. But Aiden respected her boundaries. He never pushed too far. Then came the gala. It was a charity event hosted by Hayes Capital. Aiden was being honored for a new children's foundation he launched in Noah's name. Emily had not wanted to go. She did not like fancy places or cameras or the idea of people whispering about who she was and why she was standing beside a billionaire. But Aiden had asked, gently, and for once she wanted to be proud beside him. She wore a navy blue dress that still had the price tag tucked discreetly under the seam, her hair pinned up by her mother. Aiden looked at her like she had just stepped out of a dream. He held her hand the entire night. But peace never lasted. She saw him the moment they stepped onto the marble floor, Aiden's father. Standing near the bar, flanked by men in suits and women with glassy smiles, the same cold eyes, the same tight mouth. He hadn't disappeared. He had just gone quiet. Emily stiffened. Aiden felt it and followed her gaze. His expression darkened, but he didn't move. Emily pulled at his hand. "Don't! He's trying to provoke you." But the man made his way toward them anyway, glass of champagne in hand, voice smooth as ever. "I see you've chosen your legacy, Aiden. Very noble. The struggling single mother, the sick child. It makes a compelling story." Aiden stepped forward, voice calm but sharp. "Leave. Now." His father smiled thinly. "You think you've won, but the board is watching. Your shareholders care more about numbers than narratives. And women like her? They come and go, but dynasties are permanent." Emily grabbed Aiden's arm. "Let's go. Please." They left without another word, but the damage was done. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Aiden paced the apartment, unable to sit still. She finally snapped. "Why does he still have this power over you? You say he's nothing, but look at you. You're terrified of becoming him." Aiden stopped pacing. "I'm not afraid of becoming him. I'm afraid he's right. That no matter how much I try, I'll never be enough. That this will fall apart because I don't deserve it." Emily's voice dropped. "Then fight for it. But stop letting him live in your head rent-free." The next morning, headlines broke. Shares in Hayes Capital were dropping. Anonymous accusations had surfaced claiming Aiden had funneled company funds into personal accounts. Emily read the article 3 times before her vision cleared. She knew it wasn't true. But the media didn't care. The board didn't care. Perception was reality. Aiden called an emergency meeting. Lawyers were brought in. Audits began. He was suspended pending investigation. Emily watched him from the doorway of their bedroom that night, shoulders hunched, tie discarded, jaw clenched with silent fury. He looked like a man unraveling. She walked in and sat beside him. "This is him, isn't it? Your father planted this." Aiden nodded. "Most likely. But he's clever. He never leaves a trace." Emily reached for his hand. "Then we leave a bigger trace." The next day, she called a reporter she trusted, one who had covered Noah's foundation launch. She told him everything: the threats, the manipulation, the letter, the history. She handed over copies of documents Aiden had buried, afraid to use them against his family. The story went live 3 days later. It exploded. Public sympathy shifted. Comment sections were flooded with support. Women shared their own stories. Investors started to ask questions not about Aiden, but about the man who had ruled the company before him. Within a week, the board met again. Aiden was reinstated. His father was forced to resign. But the stress had taken its toll. Noah relapsed. It started with fatigue, then bruises on his arms. Then the fevers came back. Emily sat in the hospital room again, clutching his hand, willing the monitors to slow. Aiden never left her side. The doctor explained it calmly. His body was rejecting the transplant. It was rare, but not impossible. They needed another match, a new donor. Time was running out. Emily asked if siblings could help. The doctor nodded. Cord blood. A half match might be enough. Emily turned to Aiden, eyes wide with fear and something else. Possibility. That night, she took the test. Positive. She was pregnant. She cried in the bathroom for what felt like an hour, not out of fear this time, but because this child might save the first. She told Aiden over dinner. His hands trembled when he reached for hers. "We're going to be okay," he whispered. "I'll make sure of it." The pregnancy changed everything. Emily was careful. Aiden was overprotective. Noah's condition stabilized long enough for them to schedule the cord blood collection. The transplant worked. When Noah woke up smiling again, Emily broke down in tears. Aiden held both of them, one arm wrapped around each. They moved to a house outside the city, not a mansion, just a home with a backyard, 2 small bedrooms, and a kitchen filled with warmth. Emily's mother moved in. Aiden built a nursery. Noah started calling the baby Peanut. One night, months later, Emily sat on the porch, her belly round beneath her dress, the summer air thick with the smell of jasmine. Aiden joined her, handing her tea. He kissed her forehead. "You know what I've been thinking?" he asked. She smiled. "That you want to name the baby after yourself?" He laughed. "That I want to marry you." She froze, then smiled again. "Only if we write our own vows." He kissed her. Deal. The wedding was small, quiet, and almost secret. Emily did not want extravagance or attention. She did not want ballrooms or floral arches or engraved invitations. What she wanted was simplicity, safety, and sincerity. They exchanged vows beneath an old oak tree behind their new home, with only a few close friends, Emily's mother, and a sleepy Noah holding a bouquet he kept dropping out of boredom. Emily wore a simple white dress, her belly gently visible beneath the fabric. Aiden wore a navy suit with no tie. He cried when he saw her walk down the garden path. Their vows were short, heartfelt, and written by hand. Emily told him that she never thought she would trust anyone again, let alone the person who once broke her. Aiden told her that losing her had been the costliest mistake of his life, and that finding her again was his redemption. They kissed to the sound of wind through the trees, and Noah giggling because the officiant mispronounced his name. There was no cake, just cupcakes. No champagne, just lemonade and cider. No photographer, only a friend with an old camera, but the moment was perfect. It felt like a full circle, gently closing, not with noise but with peace. They settled into something resembling ordinary. Aidan scaled back his work hours, choosing to spend more time with Noah and Emily. He still handled major investments, still made decisions that shaped the direction of companies, but now he did it from the breakfast table while feeding Noah cereal, or with a baby monitor crackling softly beside his laptop. Emily left the diner for good. She started selling her illustrations online. Her drawings, once hidden in sketchbooks and buried under bills, began to sell quickly. People loved her soft, detailed renderings of motherhood, family, and quiet strength. She dedicated her first collection to Noah, titled Built from Love. Orders poured in. Life, for once, was gentle. But gentleness does not erase scars. One night, in the 3rd trimester of her pregnancy, Emily woke up with a sharp pain in her side. It was not contractions, but something deeper, more alarming. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled. Aidan, already halfway out of bed from the sound of her breathing changing, caught her before she hit the floor. They rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis was preeclampsia, high blood pressure. Risk to both mother and baby. She was admitted for monitoring. The doctors assured her it was under control, but Emily felt the fear bloom again, a familiar weight in her chest like a tide returning. During those long hours, Aidan barely left her side. He read her short stories, brought her sketchbooks, let her yell at him when her emotions spun out of control, and in the quiet moments, he told her stories about his own childhood, things he had never shared before, about growing up in a house filled with cold wealth and empty conversation, about how he used to climb into the closet to cry where no one could hear, about how he used to dream, not of being rich, but of being enough. Emily listened, tears slipping silently down her cheeks, not because she pitied him, but because she understood. They were two people who had learned how to survive in the dark and were now learning how to build light together. Then came the night when everything almost fell apart again. Emily was sleeping when the alarms went off. The baby's heart rate dropped. Nurses rushed in. Aidan was forced to step outside. For 40 minutes he stood in the hallway gripping the chair rail so tightly his knuckles turned white. He heard nothing, only the echo of his heartbeat in his ears. Then a nurse stepped out and nodded. The baby was safe. They were prepping for early delivery. Owen James Hayes was born at 34 weeks, small but strong. He cried the moment he entered the world, as if announcing that he had no intention of being fragile. Emily was pale but stable. Aidan held Owen against his chest for hours in the NICU, whispering promises into soft curls and tiny fingers. He told his son that he had been given a second chance in life and he would never waste it. Emily recovered slowly. The stress had taken a toll on her body. There were moments when she couldn't stop crying, when she felt ashamed of needing help, when the weight of motherhood and survival pressed down like it always had. But Aidan never wavered. He cooked, cleaned, bathed Noah, fed Owen, and sat beside her even when she pushed him away. One night, she broke down completely, sobbing in the hallway, knees on the cold tile, saying she didn't feel strong anymore. Aidan knelt beside her and held her face. "You don't have to be strong all the time," he whispered. "You just have to let me stand with you when you can." That night marked a shift. Emily stopped trying to hold everything together alone. She let him in, truly in, into the messy, complicated corners she had kept hidden for years. She showed him old letters, childhood journals, fears she had never spoken out loud, and Aidan in return shared every part of himself she had never seen, his regrets, his guilt, his insecurities. They built something stronger than romance. They built safety. Months passed. Owen grew. Noah flourished. Emily's illustrations were featured in a gallery. Aidan launched a grant program for single mothers who wanted to start businesses. He named it the Sullivan Initiative. Emily cried when she saw it on the brochure. One afternoon, after a morning of planting flowers with Noah, Emily sat on the porch holding Owen while Aidan read a book beside her. She looked at them and whispered, I never thought I'd get here. Aiden closed the book. Where? To a place where I feel whole again. He reached over and squeezed her hand. You didn't just get here, you built it. The late summer sun hung low over the garden, casting long golden rays across the lawn, where Noah chased Bubbles barefoot, while Owen lay giggling on a blanket nearby. Emily sat on the porch swing, a glass of lemonade in one hand and her sketchbook in the other, capturing the moment in soft pencil strokes. Aiden stepped outside, drying his hands on a kitchen towel, and joined her, placing a gentle kiss on her temple before sitting beside her. They watched the boys in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that said everything. It had been a long road, one filled with detours neither of them had chosen, pain neither had deserved, and love they had both feared had been lost for good. But somehow, through every twist and shadow, they had made it here, together. Emily turned to Aiden and smiled, not the cautious smile of someone hoping for peace, but the full smile of someone who had found it. I used to think healing meant forgetting, she said softly, like if I pretended hard enough, none of it had happened. Aiden reached for her hand and laced his fingers with hers. But now, I think healing means remembering it all and choosing to love anyway, choosing to live despite it, choosing joy without apology. He squeezed her hand. You didn't just survive, Emily. You changed your whole story. She rested her head on his shoulder. Maybe, but I didn't do it alone. The sun dipped lower and the sky began to shift into soft pinks and blues. Noah ran up with a bubble wand in one hand and a grin missing 2 front teeth. Mommy, Daddy, look! I made the biggest one. Owen squealed from the blanket, flailing his arms like he understood the celebration. Emily laughed and Aiden stood, scooping Owen up into his arms as Noah climbed into Emily's lap. The swing rocked gently beneath their weight, and for a few blissful seconds, time seemed to pause. Later that night, after the kids were in bed and the house had gone quiet, Emily and Aiden stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching Owen sleep. His tiny chest rose and fell with perfect rhythm, his fingers curled into the blanket she had knitted during her hospital stay. Emily leaned into Aiden's side, her voice so afraid I'd never feel safe again, so afraid love would always mean pain. Aiden kissed her hair. You gave love another chance, even when it had hurt you the most. That's the bravest thing anyone can do. Emily turned to him. Do you think it's possible to really start over? He smiled. We didn't start over. We started right where we left off, but this time, we didn't run. She nodded, tears gathering but not falling. She was not crying from sadness or fear. She was crying because she had finally reached the place she thought she never would, a place where love didn't demand sacrifice, where family meant presence, not pain, and where she no longer had to carry everything alone. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, gentle and steady, like a lullaby. Emily looked at the man beside her, at the life they had built from pieces once broken, and whispered, We're going to be okay, aren't we? Aiden held her hand tighter. We already are.